When we talk about the Apaches, we often think of skilled warriors, combat strategies, and resistance against invaders. But did you know that Apache women were just as important as the men, playing pivotal roles in stories that challenge everything we know? From brutal survival tactics to decisive roles in warfare, they marked their history in surprising and often shocking ways. Get ready to discover 5 amazing and lesser-known facts about Apache women that will change the way you see this fascinating culture. War tactics led by women. While history often highlights Apache men as masters of guerrilla warfare and combat, Apache women also played strategic and sometimes decisive roles in battles. With a deep knowledge of the land, they planned escape routes, selected strategic ambush sites, and even led small groups on tactical missions. These women knew the terrain like no one else, including every hidden trail, water source, and advantageous point in the desert. On occasion, they acted as decoys in carefully orchestrated operations. By pretending to be vulnerable or displaced, they lured enemies into deadly ambushes set by Apache warriors. Additionally, many women also served as advisors in war councils, sharing their experience and insight to help formulate strategies. These practices not only demonstrate the courage and intelligence of Apache women, but also highlight how their society viewed war as a collective responsibility, where everyone, regardless of gender, contributed to the survival of the group. This challenges traditional historical narratives and shines a light on the vital role these women played in some of history's most remarkable resistances. Brutal methods of resistance to colonization. Apache resistance to colonization is widely known for its ferocity, but the role of women in this struggle is a lesser explored and often shocking aspect. Like the men, Apache women were willing to employ violent and extreme methods to protect their tribes, their culture, and their survival. Historical records show Apache women actively participating in ritual executions or imposing severe punishments on captured enemies, a practice that was not just about revenge, but also served as a warning to oppressive forces. In times of conflict, they helped plan and execute retaliations that reinforced the reputation of the Apaches as relentless adversaries. These acts were not performed out of senseless brutality, but as a desperate and calculated response to the threat of cultural and physical extermination. These women proved that resistance was not exclusive to male warriors and that the fight for survival required radical actions from all members of the tribe, regardless of gender. This lesser-known side of history challenges conventional perceptions of indigenous women, showing that they too played central roles in some of the toughest and most impactful decisions in Apache resistance. Population control practices. Life in Apache communities was marked by extreme conditions where the scarcity of natural resources, conflicts with settlers and other tribes, and the unpredictability of the environment constantly tested their survival capabilities. In these circumstances, the survival of the group depended on tough and often painful decisions, especially in times of severe crisis. Women, who played a central role in Apache social structure, were often tasked with managing resources and ensuring community balance. When food, water, or shelter were insufficient to sustain everyone, population reduction decisions were made under the guidance of tribal leaders. These measures included difficult and rare actions, but were considered necessary to ensure the continuation of the group as a whole. These practices were not common nor taken lightly. They were extreme responses to emergency situations where every life in the community was at risk. Though difficult to comprehend by modern standards, these actions reflected the pragmatism of the Apache tribes in the face of adverse circumstances, where collective survival took absolute priority. Use of natural poisons in combat. Among the more sophisticated and often overlooked resistance tactics in Apache culture was the use of natural poisons, a field in which some Apache women specialized. They possessed vast knowledge of the local flora and how different plants, herbs, and roots could be used in various ways, not only for healing but also for lethal attacks. This knowledge was not only practical but essential for the survival of the tribe in times of war and scarcity. Apache women prepared poisonous compounds from plants such as aconite, mandrake, and other native species with toxic properties. These substances were applied in various ways, with the goal of sabotaging enemies without direct confrontation. One of the most effective tactics was poisoning water sources used by enemy forces, a silent yet devastating strategy that weakened invaders without them knowing where the threat came from. Additionally, women also used poisons to soak arrows, spears, or other weapons. With these weapons, they could strike from a distance, causing severe or even fatal damage with minimal contact. In ambushes, where surprise was key, these poisoned weapons were perfect tools to undermine enemy forces without exposing the tribe to the risk of direct, bloody confrontations. This strategic use of natural poisons was also deeply rooted in knowledge passed down orally from generation to generation. Often, it was the older or more experienced women who taught the younger ones about the properties of these plants and methods of preparation, making this knowledge a crucial part of the tribe's defense. Beyond the technical aspect, the use of poisons also reveals the pragmatism of the Apaches, who had to adapt their tactics in the face of limited resources and the military power of their enemies. Instead of relying solely on physical confrontation, Apache women, with their botanical skills, turned nature itself into a deadly ally. This demonstrates the importance of local knowledge and adaptability in a context of constant and unequal warfare. Enslavement and violent retaliation. During intense conflicts with settlers and rival tribes, Apache women were often not only victims of direct violence, but also of a cruel fate: enslavement. When captured, they were forced to work for the enemy or sold to settlers, often facing inhumane conditions. But the resistance of Apache women was not limited to passivity. Historical records show women who, upon being captured, used their skills, cunning, and courage to escape their captors. In some cases, they managed to kill their enslavers and flee, often returning to their tribes, where their stories became valuable accounts of the enemy's movements and intentions. These women not only freed themselves physically, but also played a key role in strengthening their tribe's resistance. This act of violent retaliation, no matter how brutal, reflected the desperate struggle for survival and the protection of Apache cultural identity. In many cases, upon returning to their tribes, these women brought crucial information about the enemy's tactics and weaknesses, allowing the Apaches to better prepare for attacks and organize more effective defenses. Moreover, this type of resistance represented a clear challenge to colonial power. Contrary to what many colonial accounts suggest, Apache women were not simply helpless victims, but active figures in a conflict that involved much more than a mere military confrontation. It was a fight for the preservation of culture and freedom for their people. The brutality that these women faced and often returned with was not just about revenge, but a strategy of resistance. Apache women, by freeing themselves and bringing back essential information, not only survived but also became central figures in the fight against the destruction of their society.